either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today in this MicroView, we are taking a look at a more recent Jackie Chan movie in lieu of doing Shanghai Noon.
Yes.
One many people have probably never heard of.
I hadn't, and now I almost regret watching it.
Same. We are doing Bleeding Steel.
What's that? You've never heard of this Jackie Chan film from 2017?
Yes. For those unfamiliar with this classic, Bleeding Steel is a 2017 cyberpunk action film about a special forces agent who is protecting his daughter / science experiment.
Yeah, this movie strikes the "my sister is my own best friend" mother.
Yeah. Oh, and also he's protecting a scientist from a gang that seems to only be the ones in this cyberpunk movie with high-tech technology.
They're going to a rave after this.
Yes. I think I have referred to them, or like when I was writing notes, I referred to them as techno something.
Techno leatherheads, because that's kind of what they look like.
I have it written down.
That or rubber suit guys. A lot of spandex and a lot of like Tron vibes.
Yeah.
But only on the bad guys.
Techno wizards, I think is what I called them.
That would also be accurate.
Yeah.
Is anybody else in this futuristic film techno? No.
Not
at all.
These guys. No one else has a flying ship.
No
one else has laser guns.
No one else even dresses like it's the future.
The most high-tech thing is a dude who has like pretty good tit prosthetics.
Yeah, and even then it's not like, wow, the future.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, it's a rubber suit.
Yeah.
And we are about to butcher some names, so I apologize.
Yeah.
It's directed by Liu Zhang and written by Erica Xiaohu, Sui Chu, and Zhang, and also Zhang as well. It stars Jackie Chan,
of course,
Shou Lo, and Nana Ouyang.
I know one of these people.
I do too. We know only one of them, really.
Yes.
Besides Jackie Chan.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And since Jackie Chan needs no introduction, Lo and Ouyang kind of do, because most of us are probably less familiar with them. Lo has been in a couple Stephen Chow movies, including Journey to the West.
You've seen that one.
As Prince Important.
A good name.
And he was the octopus in his other movie, The Mermaid, which is lesser, in my opinion, than Chow's other works.
Yeah, but, a little bit more familiar with it.
Yes. Just 2 movies more.
Yeah.
As for Ouyang, she's a bit of a newcomer. She started in 2014 with Beijing Love Story, and she's been in a handful of roles since then, but
a lot of them have been aimed at the Chinese audience, though.
Yes,
so, unfortunately, I'm not familiar with most of her work.
Yes, and that is the thing. This movie is a Chinese movie. It's not, or it's semi-international.
It made it to international waters, but it was like born, bred, and for the Chinese audience. And we just happened to end up with it.
Yeah, because if I remember right, all the bad guys in this movie are American or English.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't say it's the most heavy-handed, like, pro-Chinese action film I've seen in recent years, but it is definitely not subtle.
It is no Iron Mask.
No, it's not. But it is, you are not in any doubt of who helped fund this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a Beijing movie, so.
It is a Beijing movie. It definitely gets away with a lot more than, exactly, Charlie. It gets away with a lot more than some films that I've seen. But it is definitely one of those things where, like, oh yeah, and we're going to send this to, like, Australia, who then sent it to everyone else.
Yes.
Sort of movie.
Yeah, and how we found this movie is actually wasn't in a planning session to begin with.
No.
We were out at lunch while we were discussing, and I think it was the lunch between, like, one of the Lord of the Rings recordings. And we were discussing what kind of, like, Jackie Chan movies and roles we had seen. And, like, I think it got brought up because we talked to, your husband wasn't convinced that he didn't do the voice for Jackie Chan Adventures.
Oh, that's right. And then we got onto the subject of, like, we had heard, and, like, I don't have a ton of backing to it, because, like, most of my Jackie Chan movies that I watch are his American versions, with a couple of the British ones and, like, some Australian stuff thrown in. But I don't really know him for any Hong Kong or Chinese films.
Yeah.
Or Beijing films like this one. So I'd heard through interviews that his style is different in those films. And so we were really interested to see, like, how different.
Yes, and oh boy, is it way different.
It's very different.
The only thing I know Jackie Chan outside of, like, the main stuff is, like, Fist of Drunken Master, which Fist of Drunken Master is more in line of what we see in our current, and what we know of Jackie Chan in the West.
Yeah.
And then the little bits you can glimpse of him in, like, Big Boss or other Chinese or other kung fu movies.
There's a lot of, like, and even in those films, there is an emphasis on it being, like, the Jackie Chan that you are familiar with. Even if his humor isn't up front, it still has that, like, vaudeville kind of styling to it, even when it's just a fight scene. Yeah.
And this, I would say this one feels more in line with what he did for The Foreigner.
I would agree. This one feels a lot more acting and a less fighting than I think a lot of us are used to seeing.
Yeah.
And not in like there is less fighting. No, there's a ton of fighting in this movie. It's just not what you're knowing him for.
Yeah, and I think, so since I don't really know much about Chinese cinema outside of the handful of kung fu movies and the random horror film I stumble upon.
Sure.
I think some of this would be easy to chalk up to us not understanding some of it.
Sure, there's definitely a difference.
Yeah, and I mean, does that make for a bad movie? Not necessarily, but...
No, but it does, I think, influence the, like, how the story is told. Because we both watched this and immediately were like, this is a choppy movie.
Yes.
This flops really hard between what's happening, where it's happening. But honestly, that's been kind of on par with other films that I've seen out of Hong Kong and Beijing.
Yeah, it's not so much about, like, the clean storytelling or the fluid storytelling that we expect. It's just like, this happens, now we're here, and now we're back to here.
And also, like, the twists of the story aren't like the dun-dun-dun sort of twist that I'm used to. No. It's more of a, I did not see it coming that they are their own grandma.
Or, I mean, you kind of do see it coming, but it's done in, like, a really stupid manner.
Like, you get told the end, and then you watch the beginning, and then you watch the middle.
Yeah, the ending of this movie is, like, okay, I know what you're saying now, because, like, there's one part of the movie where, like, the main story is pretty straightforward. Yeah. But there's a side character in it that just...
Like, what is happening with them?
Yeah, it's Shou Lo's character. What's his name? Lee Sun. And his entire role is just...
It's everywhere.
It's all over the place. And that's where his twist comes in, because he's just that weird random agent in this movie that doesn't really make sense, and his twist ending is so stupid.
It is, but that feels, especially now that I'm getting more into these sorts of movies, it feels less of like that just wasn't a well written, and more of like a trope that I'm not familiar with, because I am seeing it more and more, especially with the action films. Okay. Where it's not a straight through timeline storytelling. It's a little bit more jumping around. It's a little bit more like flash forward to flash back, sort of like, we're remembering in the future.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, for me, like, I know the route I'm going to go down is not the route you go down for watching these movies.
Of course not.
Chinese movies. My next bout of Chinese movies is Shaw Bros. Volume 1.
Of course it is.
So it's a completely different set. I mean, it has some ties because it's the martial arts, but it's not futuristic like this.
No, this one, and this is kind of an interesting, like, this is, for me, the main complaint. I love a cyberpunk theme. I also love it's the future, but it's incredibly boringly normal. I love both of those things. I love them separately. I don't understand why this movie chose to do them both at the same time.
Yeah.
We have a full on, like, the Avengers flying spaceship sort of nonsense.
Yeah. Well, okay. So hear me out a little bit, because that's immediately what I thought of at the very beginning of this movie. Because we're gonna spoil the shit out of this movie.
But also, like, good luck following along.
So, yes, the villain does have like this Marvel's Avenger like floating city ship kind of thing.
It's gigantic. How has everyone missed it so far?
Yes. But the movie starts off like it feels like a very bad Marvel meets the first or the Edward Norton Hulk movie.
Yeah.
Because like the scientists who's holed away, the secret agents who are trying to find him, but then they find him and it's this metal like fire truck Iron Man red heart.
It is, and it's corny.
Yeah.
Like there are parts of this movie that hit that delightful action corny note, but they are few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm usually okay without those in an action movie. I get that it's not for everyone, and this movie felt like it was meant to be kind of serious at times.
Yeah.
And then at other times, because like there's moments where no one's kung fu fighting, everyone has a gun.
Yeah.
And we're just having a good old action shootout and chase. And then there's other times where we're parkour kung fuing across the city.
Yeah. And like not even that intense though, like
no, it is very light actiony.
Because there's some really stupid moments to that too, where like specifically the one scene that I thought was like, what the hell is the point of this?
Mm-hmm.
Is when Jackie Chan's character is undercover.
Yes.
In the food court.
Yes.
Overwatching his daughter's
but you don't know
experiment.
But you don't know it's the daughter's
No, you know it's
but
the daughter. You know it's the daughter. There is no question that it is the daughter.
But at the same time, you're not supposed to know.
Yeah.
But you do. You know the whole time.
But she gets into like some kung fu action battle with
a random kid.
Yeah.
Like a random person who isn't even part of the story.
And doesn't show up ever again in the movie.
No, it's just like a food court brawl.
Yeah.
But everyone kung fu's?
Yeah.
It's very odd.
It kind of plays off of that, and I brought it up, and I'd like to do it once I do a little bit more research and go through more of these movies, but like how I mentioned in our last episode that Bruce Lee kind of created the maybe I didn't mention in the last episode, but Bruce Lee, despite fighting stereotypes, kind of created the stereotype that every Chinese person knows kung fu.
Unfortunately, he completely created that.
Yeah, and this movie continues that stereotype.
Despite being made by and for people in Hong Kong.
Yes. And I mean, hey, it's probably accurate. I mean, how we see the influence of that continue into like the Jason Bourne movies.
That's true.
And any spy movie we see nowadays uses some type of martial arts choreography. We don't see the big punch out big old brawls from like westerns.
That's true. There's a lot less like boxing or one-off showdown sort of things, like especially since this movie pulls from, and I think at one point even despite being fully set in Hong Kong.
No, they go to Australia because there's a Sydney Opera House in this.
That's right, they do.
Because Jackie Chan, for some reason, is chilling on the Sydney Opera House.
I forgot that they fought on the Sydney Opera House. You're right. Okay, so this movie is set in 2 locations, and I double-checked this little bit because I was like, okay, as I was reading through some reviews of this movie, 2 big comments stood out to me. One was, why is there so much random English?
Yes.
And I am willing to give that up to, like, it's just cool at the moment.
Or they're trying to have a more international appeal, because we saw the same thing with, Grant. Okay, so with Iron Mask, I did some little reading on it while we were watching it. It was a Russian and Chinese production.
That makes more sense.
So the voiceovers for for everyone was really bad, because
that makes a lot of sense.
Like your husband was picking up, he's like, their words aren't matching. I'm like, yeah, because it's probably what they used to do in like old grindhouse and exploitation movies.
Yeah.
Or spaghetti westerns. The actors would just film in their native voice, in their say their lines in their native language, and then they dub them over after the fact.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, it's not whole scenes in English. It's like certain phrases, a couple of sentences.
It's like watching a Bollywood movie.
Yes, where it kind of just feels like, okay, maybe this is just like the thing at the moment, not a big deal, whatever. I can get over that as a critique. I don't see it as like a huge problem. But they do spend a lot of time implying that Jackie Chan is, and I quote, a CIA agent.
Something like that.
They call him CIA.
Okay.
But they also state very clearly that this movie is taking place in Hong Kong and then Sydney.
Yeah.
Is there another organization that I am not familiar with?
The organization is, and I found it in my notes, the Techno-Sis with guns.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the bad guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not even the bad guys. It's the bad guy.
That's true.
There's one bad guy who is the only person who's got his face painted like he's from goddamn Star Wars.
Yeah.
And all the other bad guys are wearing these high-tech laser suits and shit.
Correct. However, the premise of this movie I thought was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
The whole robot, nanobot / like future regrowth starfish nonsense.
Yeah.
As we've talked about with the sharks, I love a good nonsense biology.
Oh, yeah.
Make up the science. Don't tell me how it actually works. Just expect me to go along with it.
Yeah. That is the science I like in movies of like not trying to be super accurate.
Yeah. This movie does that sort of action science perfectly. Because not only does it tell you, oh, yeah, we're combining stuff kind of Jurassic Park style with a starfish because, they can regrow an arm. We want to do that.
Yeah.
And then they transplant it via touch. And it's like, yes, that's how this works. Don't question it.
Yeah, it's so stupid. And let's get to the point of that too, because it starts off with the movie starts off strong. I will give it that.
Very strong. Yeah.
It starts off with Chan's character either performing this sting to find the scientist.
He feels like he's the lead CIA agent.
I think he is supposed to be.
But he also later takes up an undercover gig, so maybe he's like
he takes it up to stalk his daughter.
Yeah, but this does not feel like lead CIA agent work.
No.
This feels like rogue CIA agent.
The second half, yeah. And the intro, so he has to choose between his dying daughter and his work, which he chooses work because, of course, it's his big case. That is the entire premise of the movie, though. Yeah. That's the morale. Yeah. And basically, what it amounts to is what kicks off all the rest of the bullshit in this movie is that there's an author who writes some dumb book called Bleeding Steel that kind of gets it right. Yes. That makes me think a little bit of, I know there was one of the Tom Clancy books that sounds about right. Well, he wrote it and he had written he speculated some secret technology, but he wrote it so accurately they thought he had gotten access to it. You know what though? We have seen this happen before. Yeah, Dr. Strangelove, where Kubrick meticulously recreated the inside of a bomber. Yeah, or the multiple times that Star Trek accidentally predicted future tech. Yeah. The countless times that The Simpsons has accidentally predicted the future. I went on a whole video about it. It's a bunch of bullshit. Of course it is, but it doesn't matter, does it? If everyone believes, it doesn't matter. I think it does matter a little bit. But at the same time, it doesn't. In movie world, sure. In movie world, it doesn't matter. It still gets this guy killed. Yeah, but it's the way that brings everyone together, and it's just it's a stupid reasoning. It is, but at the same time, there's enough loose ends that this movie never bothers to really wrap up. That you are left with the ability to make up your own details to help close those holes. Yeah. So, you're not angry at any of the problems in this movie, partially because you're too distracted. Yeah. There's a lot going on all the time. Not all of it's action, not all of it's explosions, not all of it's kung fu. There's just a lot happening. Yeah. There's a lot of cuts. There's a lot of emotions that are going back and forth. We don't know who's whose daughter, who's science experiment, who loves who is about to die. There's a lot of stakes constantly being raised. And then just left raised. And ignored. And we just kind of let that happen. Yeah. So, you're never angry at the plot problems of this movie because you don't have time to be. No, I mean, it is like Iron Mask where, we're just what the hell's going on? Because it goes right to the next bit. And it's just all right, let's just keep going through this shit. And, I don't know. It is an... Okay. and here's the thing, I don't want to hate this movie.
Me
That's
neither.
the weird thing.
Me neither. I went into this movie fully being ready to find lots of flaws with it, or to be like finding the next best treasure. Like, I had very high expectations of this movie. It didn't even come close to them, but I'm not mad.
No, I'm not either. One, pretty faces. I always enjoy that.
True.
That makes a bad movie that much better.
It also helps that, like, this is a movie that has a big name star. Like, there's no joke, no question that they are using Jackie Chan as like a, hey, this is our big actor, don't you want to see a Jackie Chan film? Like, his face is all over the front cover.
It's not like Iron Mask where they throw him on the cover and then he's there for the intro and the conclusion and then like 2 clips.
So he is the star of this one, but it's kind of like how, like, we throw, you know, an older actor on a movie to make my mom go watch it.
Yeah.
It kind of has that vibe, but they don't make him the love interest.
No.
They don't make him even really, like, the interesting character. We have, like, 2 other characters that are much more interesting, and we don't even lose them halfway through the movie.
No.
We get other things to watch other than Jackie Chan.
Do we really lose any, like, main character besides the villain dies at the end, obviously?
Of course he does.
But I don't think we really, like, lose anyone, because even, like, his henchman doesn't die.
That's correct.
Like, honestly, she is a pretty imposing force.
She's pretty cool.
Her outfit is stupid as all hell, too.
Of course it is. She's the bad guy.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know, they're just...
For a movie with such high stakes, it manages to get away with only, like, 1 death.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe that's just censorship laws and how things have to be done.
I would normally agree with you, but we do see Jackie Chan's entire arm ripped off.
Yeah.
And then we also kill the one scientist guy on screen in a very tragic, like, oh my gosh, he's losing all of his future ability to tell us the way.
Yeah.
Sort of nonsense.
Well, and maybe it's like how in the old Hays Code, like, villainy could triumph for the first 2/3 of the movie, but the hero had to triumph at the end, kind of shit. Yeah,
maybe. But at the same time, like, this movie definitely didn't feel like it was ever trying to have a sequel. Like,
no.
There's a ton of plot holes, but there's no loose ends.
Well, I mean,
everyone lives, but, like, I don't care.
And it does kind of set itself up for what I think would be a pseudo sequel, because
like more in the same world, maybe.
Yeah, because it turns out Lee Sun is the son of some other tech dude who is killed.
But again, like, you don't care.
Yeah, and he just goes off on his own, leaving Jackie Chan's kind of daughter, Nancy.
Yeah. But at the same time, you spend so much of your mental energy trying to keep track of who's who and where's what. They're like, when at the end they're like, no, we must go our separate ways. You're like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Right, occasionally.
No, not even then. She's screaming for him in, like, a fairground.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just gone.
Oh, yeah, no, it's very dramatic, but, like, it's dramatic in that action movie sort of way where you're like, you'll be fine. Eat some Ben & Jerry's ice cream, sweetie. You will get over this.
Yeah, true.
You've been together a whole week.
If that.
However, how did you feel about watching a Jackie Chan movie where Jackie Chan tried to play a serious character?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, okay, so here's the thing. I've seen Jackie Chan in serious roles.
Sure.
Not many, but, like, The Foreigner is a very serious movie, and he does a phenomenal job with it.
Yes. Yes, he does.
That being said, I think that's probably the only serious movie I've seen Jackie Chan in.
Which I think is how most people are. I think most people have seen, like, a single movie where he is serious the whole way through.
I actually scratched that. I would give Rush Hour 1 and 2. It's a more serious role. It is more serious, but he purposely put in his vaudeville styling into the action scenes of it, which, like, granted, yes, it raised it from, like, okay, I could let my 13-year-old watch this to maybe. Yeah. For a lot of people. But it did tickle the funny bone of quite a lot of folk. And for me, it wasn't him that was the comedic relief in that movie, so... This one, he doesn't try to be funny at all. And I'm trying to think. I think Rumble in the Bronx is pretty serious. I'm pretty sure Police Story is serious, but I haven't seen Police Story yet, so.
He's talked in the past about how even during his serious films in American audiences, he tries to put more into his body language and almost make it, you know, like we've talked about, like the stand-up Charlie Chaplin sort of acting where it's a little over the top.
But it's his way to express without having to actually speak and fumble words.
Exactly. Whereas with this film, this is one of the few films that I've gotten to see, partially because this is for a different audience, and it's directed by a fully different style, that, like, he really wasn't pulling any over-the-top movements for this.
No, not really.
It was a very straight role. Like, the most that we really got out of him was, like, a sweet, like, creepy dad occasionally.
Yeah.
And the rest of it was, like, kind of just him being a serious CIA agent.
Yeah.
Fighting on the roof of the Sydney Opera House.
That's accurate. Yeah, I mean, it is an odd one. I mean, just from, like, the lack of sci-fi elements, really, in this movie for a cyberpunk movie. We saw where all the budget went.
Yeah, to those, like, 3 bad guys.
I don't know. It's just really so all over the place that.
Yeah. I would really like to explore more of his works, like, aimed at similar audiences and directed by similar people. Because, like, I liked his acting in this, but, like, you didn't spend a lot of, like, despite him being the main character, in it the whole movie, you really don't spend a whole lot of time with his character. You spend a lot of time flashing back to the daughter, / science experiment. You spend a lot of time with, like, building these relationships between the side characters, and it was all good. The acting was all fine, but you didn't really get a strong sense of, like, how this was, like, this didn't feel like him carrying a whole movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think you're hitting at a point of why this movie's a little bit weird. It's that they're not really, while he is, like, the main character, he's not, like, the main character.
Yeah, like, he's the main character in title and on the front of the movie poster, but he doesn't drive the story.
No.
He's not the main, like, interests.
He feels
he feels along for the ride.
Exactly. That's what I was going to get to.
Yeah.
Well, I pulled it up while we were talking, and looks like the director's doing a Untitled Police Story movie.
Which I've heard a lot about Police Story, so I would be very interested in watching it. Police Story is a pretty big series in Japan. They've had several movies, a couple video games, I think. Maybe some books, not entirely sure. I haven't really gotten into it a whole lot, but I have some friends who are, and they love the series.
Yeah, I know Police Story is like Jackie Chan's breakout role in just China in general, because I think it took a while for it to come here, but wait, November, it is on my list because I've been told I should give it a go.
Same. So I'm excited to see that, because there's a chance that that'll be kind of the comparison I'm looking for.
Yeah, and if I remember right, I think this movie was packaged in a Japanese bundle of the Police Story series, even though it has no tie to the Police Story franchise.
Yeah, apparently in Japan it came out under the name, like, Police Story.
Yeah.
And then afterwards people were like, this isn't part of that series, by the way.
Yeah.
It just happens to be named that, and also the song at the end that Jackie sings is named Police Story.
Yeah. It's like Franco Nero, whenever his stuff was released in Germany, it's like Django, even if it wasn't a Django
exactly.
movie.
This is exactly what happened with that. So, like, not gonna lie, now my interest is very piqued in this Police Story series.
Yeah. And I mean, with this as well, for my own side of things, I want to go down a little bit of a Jackie Chan rabbit hole, because, like, I know we give Nicholas, I think there's a certain level of love that we have at Jackie Chan that we overlook anything bad he's been in, and we try and only remember Rush Hour and Shanghai Noon.
Of course.
But
we do that with a lot of actors.
Yeah.
And he's in a lot.
Exactly, and that's the thing. He's in more movies than Nicolas Cage has been in.
That's true.
But we give Cage so much shit compared to, like, Jackie Chan, even though his filmography definitely has a lot of horror, like, really bad movies in them.
And, like, I have some friends who love Jackie Chan like we love Nicolas Cage.
Mm-hmm.
And they watch everything they can get their hands on, and like way more than I have ever watched.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of their biggest, like, when I talk to them about, like, oh, Nicolas Cage is finally getting out of debt, go him.
Yeah.
He can stop making these shit movies. They're like, oh, he has nothing on Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan has been in some real garbage films. I'm like, no, not Jackie.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, really.
And I mean, I don't want to believe it, but I looked at the list and there's so much I don't know that I'm sure that
it's just odds of probability, right? Like you can't be in this many films and them all be good.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
No, and I agree. And I think Bleeding Steel is just one of those weird oddities that we stumbled upon.
Yeah. And it's one of those films too where like it's not that bad.
No.
Would I go out of my way to watch it again? No. But, like, I'm not upset I watched it.
No, and at the same time, so I kind of watched this around the time I rewatched The Winter Soldier.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a lot
of visual similarities.
Yes, very much so. Actually, that's it. The bad guy looks like, oh shit, what's his name from Guardians of the Galaxy?
Which
Roman.
One? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Roman from...
Yeah, he does. Yeah, that's correct. You know, actually, that brings up a good point. This movie feels, and like, time period-wise, it's about right. It has a lot of elements of, like, that genre of the Avengers.
Yeah.
Where, like, it's got some futuristic stuff going on, but most of it's, modern day. Fine.
Yeah, I want to look up the bad guy. His name's Andre, right?
I believe so.
So, we looked it up.
We're so dumb.
There's
a reason he looks like he belongs from the Avengers.
By the way, again, these MicroViews, we do almost no research for these.
That's part of the joy.
He is an Avenger.
He is. He's a bad guy in the Avengers.
He's Jack Rollins in Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
That's why it feels Avengery.
Callan Mulvey.
Mulvey. He has that stereotypical evil Russian look.
Jason Statham with hair.
Yeah. He's got the strong bad guy eyebrows.
In jawline.
A lot of, like, I'm sexy jawline, but the eyebrows say red flags.
Yeah.
You know what? He's found a good acting spot.
I mean, hell, yeah.
He's in a lot.
Yeah, how many credits does this dude have?
More than
47.
You know what? For someone who's been in as many and, like, I recognize most of these films. How have I not put it together that this is the same person?
Because he's covered in paint this time around.
That is true.
Yeah, it's like when you remove his fucking nose in Harry Potter. The guy who plays Voldemort, I can't remember his name. He's also the bad guy in Bruges.
Yeah, but like once you take off the nose, is it even the same person?
No, but like I still have a hard time correlating that to the guy who gets pissed off and then yells at his wife, "No, you're a fucking phone."
But you know what? That is on brand for Voldemort.
If Voldemort used phones.
If Voldemort had a wife.
Yeah, that too. And so, Chris, would you rent, buy, or decline that we ever watched it, despite having an audio recording of us watching it?
I'd probably rent this.
I would too.
Like, it's not bad, and honestly, like, if it was a rainy day and I felt like an action film, I'd probably put it on. Yeah,
something I can just shut off my mind to and not, like, pay attention, but
at the same time, like, halfway through, I'm gonna be terribly confused.
Yeah.
But it's, like, it's fun. It's a fun, confusing film.
Yeah, it is. If you want just dumb, stupid Jackie Chan action, this is the movie for you. If not, I don't know. I'd still say rent it just to see how much it kind of rips off Avengers, because now I kind of want to...
There's a lot of parallels now that you've brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is, like, I would rent this in a, like, list of Jackie Chan films.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd pair this with a couple other of his that I, like, know much better, or are some of his, like, bigger title roles.
Okay.
Just to, like, give myself a break, but still say the marathon's going.
Okay.
Give myself some time for snacks. Chit-chat a little bit, get caught up on my text while this movie's playing.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's fine to have on the background if you don't want to do anything else, really.
Exactly.
Or if you want to do other stuff.
But if you happen to watch it, it's still fun.
Yeah, it's dumb fun. So.
It is dumb fun.
Yeah, but Anyway, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.